1. Welcome to the Strategy and Communication Services Committee meeting for April 11th. And I'm just trying to bring up here my committee. I know Councillor O'Toole's on this one, myself, Mayor Clayton, and Councillor Bosch. First thing, I don't see any delegations, but we do have an in-camera item. So if I could have somebody make a motion to go in camera.
I would make that motion to go in camera.
Councillor O'Toole. Thank you. I'll call the question. Okay, and we are good to go.
Good.
Thank you. 3 1. And welcome back to the Strategy and Communication Services Committee for April 11th. And just coming out of camera, just looking for a motion. Okay, Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Councillor Berg. Oh, you changed it. There we go. I move committee recommend council approve policy 125, the land acknowledgement policy.
Okay, thank you. That is in order. Any comments or questions? No, I believe this is going to come up again in 4.2 in a little bit more detail. So I will call the question. Okay, separate report. My apologies. Okay, and that passes. Moving on to reports. 4.1, Service Area Report with Director McEachran.
Thank you, Chair Berg. I'll start off with one of our major projects that are underway right now, which is our marketing area, looking at the brand enhancement strategy. Just to give an update, we had public surveys for the strategy, which closed on April 9th. We've received 1,154 resident surveys. We received 63 visitor surveys. We did expect this number to be a low number. But we did receive 251 potential visitor surveys that were submitted. In addition to this, we're also working the marketing area as well as our communications area, HR, and our intergovernmental area are all working on the Grande Prairie Police Service, different components of the marketing, communications, and HR strategies for that as well. Our city clerks area is working on a new administrative policy development framework. It's being sent to marketing for design work as the next phase of this. And our corporate communications area is working with rolling out a launch of a new events page, which is going to be rolled out publicly very shortly. We're in initial testing has just been completed, and the city, we're now reaching out to the community to raise awareness of the new feature on the website and encouraging its use. In our human resources area, we're just preparing for a professional administrative assistant day on April 26th. The Culture Action Group is leading a networking session with professional development activities to recognize the classification. And also, as I mentioned, collaborating with the police transition team on an HR strategy. We're just in the midst of preparing the chief of police, I should say the recruitment for the chief of police position is well underway. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Chief McEachran. Any questions? No, looks like a smooth report. Thank you very much. Moving on to 4.2. The 2023 to 2025 Indigenous Relations Framework. If you want to introduce this, Chief McEachran.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So again, we have Director Tarrant is here to present on our Indigenous Relations Framework, and with him is Warren. I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your last name. Nederak, who is our Indigenous Relations Advisor and is here a subject matter expert. So Chief Tarrant will do the presentation and take any questions.
Mr. Tarrant.
Thank you. And through the chair, so before you have the 2023 to 25 Indigenous Relations Framework. This was born, it started back in 2008. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was created by the federal government, and it launched a very extensive look at the residential school system and documented all the experiences that individuals that were sent to those schools had, and captured their stories. And out of those, that extensive study that was undertaken, in 2015, a report was released from the Commission, which outlined 94 calls to action for different areas that different orders of government can take, as well as residents of Canada, to advance truth and reconciliation and recognize the history and culture of our Indigenous peoples, and recognize the abuses that took place, and to bring about reconciliation as those through those. In 2022, the city hired Warren, who is the city's Indigenous Relations advisor, and since that time, he's been developing a Indigenous Relations framework. He has looked at all the current initiatives that the city has done in terms of our Indigenous relations, and evaluated some of the current practices, and has developed this framework that will guide the city's actions over the next 3 years in terms of future actions that we can take. You'll see throughout the framework there is a tie to one of the 94 calls to action, and some are very direct ties, some are a little bit more indirect, but we wanted to make sure that there was it was coming from a place of recognition of the Commission's work, and tying some of the initiatives to that work. Obviously, there's lots of items that we have there, and so we wanted to make sure we took a measured approach. Can't do it all in 1 month or 1 year, so we've developed this as the next actions for over the next 3 years. There may be, you'll see in the report, there's a number of the actions call for evaluations of city facilities, and looking at ways where we can provide more culturally appropriate spaces for an Indigenous population. And there may be some capital requests that come out of some of those plannings, and so those will be presented for the 2024 budget deliberations there. If endorsed, we do plan to have a ceremony to recognize the framework and the city's initiatives, starting with a flag ceremony. Many councils across the province and across the country have adopted local Indigenous flags within their city council chambers, and as well as posting the formal land acknowledgement within chambers. And if and when the framework is endorsed, we anticipate having that done shortly, and there's been a lot of work being done on what the proper protocols are, and how do we involve local elders and Indigenous leaders to commemorate and the work that has been done and is continued to be done throughout the framework. That I will open it up to questions.
Councillor Bosch, then Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. I appreciate this. We've been waiting for this. Thank you for all the work on all of the calls to action that we can possibly do, right? So many months on this, so congratulations. And I look forward to moving this forward to Council.
Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. Yeah, definitely appreciate the work, and I like everything that's in it. I'm kind of struggling with things that I feel are maybe missing from it. And by that, what I mean is there's a lot of really feel-good stuff in here. I also think there's some tough parts to reconciliation. So, for example, I look at Grande Prairie's population is only 11-12% Indigenous, but over 60% of our chronically homeless identify as Indigenous. And I think there's some real difficult social factors from residential schools and other historical practices that have created trauma, have created social disconnection, have created various negative outcomes for our Indigenous population. And I really do think that some of the tough things we're doing, like creating supportive housing and like having mobile outreach, so there's a more compassionate response to people that are in crisis, things like that are part of our truth and reconciliation work. And I'm curious if there was thought of including some of these harder things that we're doing as a community to really help the people who were most impacted directly by our legacy, including any of that work in this framework.
Go ahead.
One wonderful question, Councillor Bressy. Thank you for that. Through the chair. So a lot of the times, so when I learned about implementing truth and reconciliation calls to action and leading a culture for change in a community, it was really about tying those calls to things that we can do, tangible things, ways to celebrate the culture. And I think when it comes back to addressing some of the, well, redressing some of the issues around the residential school system and the legacy that's left behind on the population of Indigenous people, and now being overnumbered in homelessness and things like that, really it comes down to providing ceremony, providing a tie to culture, identity that we can share with them and bring them in on, so that they can celebrate that inclusively in our community. And when we do those things, we create a culture of healing and a culture of understanding and bringing them in and making them one. And I think that's really what these calls to actions are hoping to aim to achieve, is addressing those hard, challenging things we're dealing with through culture and identity and celebrating that.
Of course, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, please.
I was just also wanted to speak to the idea of the hard things. So we are doing a lot of training and acknowledgement and commemoration around the history and legacy. So a lot of those hard things will be taught. And I hope that this is a living, breathing document that we will be able to look back on and make changes to as we begin to learn more and unpack the trauma and the history and the legacy that's really there that maybe isn't fully unpacked yet. So thank you.
Councillor Bressy.
Great. No, thank you. I appreciate that. You're getting me a lot more comfortable with this in terms of not a whole lot that needs to be added for me to be happy with this. But I do wonder if we're missing just maybe one row under, maybe it's under city services, in terms of, there's a lot, I see a lot in this. So if we adopt this framework, it's direction of staff across the organization of how we expect them to conduct their work. And I see a lot of council direction in this to our sports development, wellness, and culture people about including Indigenous voices in our cultural programming and our events. But I wonder if we do need a row talking about, I really do expect increased engagement from our staff in the Indigenous communities, from our community social development department, from our, even though it won't be under council, but from our police service, from things like that. And I wonder if we do need a row to explicitly say, hey, it's not just about culture, it's also about social development, about community safety, about things like that, that we expect Indigenous voices to have strength in. And again, that's realizing that our Indigenous folks are massively overrepresented in the people that need to deal with the harder things that our city has to deal with.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressy. I'm going to jump in and then go to Councillor O'Toole, then Councillor Bosch. So I love the depth that you guys have gone through in this. So many wonderful things covered off. I see many of them as first steps, but they're first steps in the right direction. And I love where the potential for this path can lead. So a couple things. I'm active, obviously, in arts and culture. And so some of the things that I'm really excited about, I think it mentions the museum. Like currently right now, our museum has 2 shelves dedicated to Indigenous history. There's a lot about dinosaurs, there's a lot about settlers, but there's a few century or millennia gap in what we currently do. So I'm excited to see where that leads. Fort Edmonton recognized that. They've got a world-class facility, world-class information, and I know that it's fairly recent, and that's something that I know that we could tap into. So that's one element. Another exciting thing that I think we have potential at is when we fly into airports around the world, you know what culture you're flying into. Our airport is beautiful but fairly generic. So there's another thing that, again, I see there's direction and there's a first step there, but I'd love to see where that path could lead around that arts and culture. So thank you guys for the extensive work that you've done on this. As somebody that identifies as Indigenous, I really appreciate where this is going and what it does for that arts and cultural component. And again, I want to personally thank Councillor Bressy for bringing up the tough angle around this, because there's that different reality too. Part of it is creating pride, and a lot of this will create pride and acceptance, but there's also that other element that we can also build on as well. Over to Councillor O'Toole.
Yes, thank you very much, and I do appreciate this report. I know the effort that was put into this over the years and just currently. My concern is, where is this at now? Do you expect to bring this back every year or so to maybe do updates like we do bylaw and land development and permitting and stuff like that? Is that something that you see in the future, that we'll be analyzing this and maybe making some subtle changes or large ones?
Yeah, go ahead.
Through the chair, absolutely. This is something we plan to report on an annual basis, and going over the progress that's been made throughout the year, and identifying what the next steps are, and then looking for input for any revisions or any new initiatives that council may want to undertake.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair Berg. For me, I'm not really worried about potentially what's not there. This framework seems quite extensive to me, and I do know that this is a fluid document that you will look throughout. You don't know what you don't know. This is brand new for us. So as long as it's fluid and open to change, I'm pretty comfortable with what you've done. Warren, you're the expert on this. That's what you were hired for. So you included a numerous amount of stakeholders. So at this point in time, I think I'm pretty secure with what you've done here. It's excellent. And Rory, you too, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate the detail on the calls to action, and in particular on page 15 of 32. Let's make sure I got the right page. Top line, collaborating with local Indigenous artists and youth to implement Indigenous art around Grande Prairie. And I said, I think we're shooting a little low on adding one piece of Indigenous artwork into a public space every 3 years. I think we need to up our game on that. And and then going down to page 17 of 32, and I think it's the last line, development promote, the title is create local Indigenous content for our community to learn the history of our area. And and the last bullet point says develop and promote our local history and educational resources for the community. And I really think there's a couple of partner pieces that are missing here, like GP tourism and various places that should be included. I don't want to be directive here, but I think we're missing some opportunity, as one of the greatest growing part of tourism now is people want to come here and hear what our Indigenous history is. So I think it's important that we focus some areas in there. So, and there's a collaboration with, and I can't find the area on the hospital, of having Indigenous medicine incorporated. So there's an external partner there. How do you go and say, this is how you're going to conduct yourself with medicines that are traditional? So I'm just wondering, there's some outside pieces that need to be collaborated with. Thank you.
Any comments around that, gentlemen? No? Okay. Yeah, okay. So I'll jump in and then go to Councillor O'Toole again. Actually, I was going to comment and compliment around, again, what I say is a first step, and I interpret this as around tourism and business, and I see Chief Harrop is on the line, but on page 10, commerce and creativity, there's a lot of, be it sports and tourism, a lot of different opportunities that are built in here or implied. And so again, my compliments to you gentlemen for for again, including that first step in here to lead to a path of great direction. Councillor O'Toole.
Yeah, I was wondering if we're ready to take care of business.
Yep.
I move that committee recommend council endorse the 2023 through 2025 Indigenous Relations Framework.
And that is in order, so I'll call the question. And that passes 3-1, or 3-0, sorry. Mayor Clayton is offline. No correspondence, no other business that I could see, so thank you, gentlemen. Bylaw and policy review around Bylaw C 1461, and again, I'll go back to Chief McEachran.
Thank you, Chair Berg. Director Leona Hansen will be presenting on this item for the committee, and I will pass it over to Ms. Hansen as soon as she gets set up.
Ms. Hansen, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so this is a new bylaw that's being introduced. It's to replace the existing assessment review bylaw, which is C1249, and the new bylaw that we're recommending that committee have council give 3 readings to is bylaw C1461. So council is required to have an assessment review board, and through that to have a bylaw to allow them to conduct the business. The reason for the new bylaw is there are times where there are a number of changes that may occur over the course of many amendments or a lot of word editing or sections that that have been amended or recommended for amending. And the bylaw gets really difficult to follow after a while. And so in order to make it easy for the public to read and understand, that is the reason why a new bylaw has been created for the Assessment Review Board in this particular case. The information was provided to committee, and as mentioned, some of the things were wordsmithing, some formatting, and some legislation requirements that were updated for this current new bylaw proposed. Some of the additional ones is under the definition to create clarity around what the term board means, the clarity around council's appointment to the board. So there was again, with that, we did a jurisdictional scan with multiple other municipalities, and with that came to the decision of a more generic term for board appointments, giving the council the ability to appoint members based on nominations received or submissions received. Presiding officer was another one that we updated for clarity purposes. And under sections 7 through 10, under the chair, there was additional information added to create clarity around the responsibilities outlined in legislation for the Assessment Review Board. Section 24 and 25 reference the refunding of the fee should an applicant be successful in their appeal. And so just what that process is and some timelines attached to that for administrative purposes. And under remuneration, which is section 26, the term chair has been changed to presiding officer, and this is to reflect that the fees paid to the presiding officer means they are actually presiding over the hearing that is taking place, where the chair may not be always the presiding officer over the hearing taking place. So creating clarity around those fees that are paid. With that, I would welcome any questions that committee has.
Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. I'm just kind of curious, maybe I'm not understanding our current process and the new process, but my understanding is right now it's just administration works to figure out who's available for it, puts three three panel members together and they elect their presiding officer. But if I'm understanding this correctly, there'd actually be somebody not from administration appointed as chair, and they'd be responsible for picking which members go to a current hearing. Am I understanding that change correctly?
So with the chair is appointed by council, and that is a change that is occurring, and that's requirement of legislation. And so that's a reason for that change. And so it is the intention of administration after council passes this bylaw, if it's in order for them, that we would then bring back applications for individuals to be appointed as the chair. The process that happens is that based on availability, the chair would, if the chair is available, they would be selected to participate in the hearing and be a member of the hearing. And based on availability of members, then the members are selected by administration to become members of that particular hearing.
Okay.
And in the case of a composite board, then the province appoints the chair. In the case of a local assessment review board, then it is the local chair, if available, that would naturally become the presiding officer. And the other members, the other two of the other members would be just regular members. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you. This may be just a clerical cleanup in both the Act and page 3. It talks about fees and a link to the fees and bylaw. And then on page 22, it refers, not page 22, item number 2 under fees. And when you click on the link, the fees and charges bylaw needs to be amended in the area when it comes to bus passes that we passed a bylaw just last week. It just needs to be updated in there. So it's something that just needs to be taken care of.
Right. Through the chair to Councillor O'Connor. Yes, the bylaw that will be coming back to committee and to council for a further amendment to do with the motion that you mentioned regarding bus passes. So there is some work to be done on that amendment, is my understanding, through the respective department, and then it will come back to committee for review.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Councillor Berg. Can you reiterate the administration role in this again? I've got the council part and the chair part, but if the chair isn't around, what is the role of administration in that situation?
So through the chair to Councillor Bosch. So if the chair is not available, then another one of the members is selected as the chair, and they select them. The members select them at the meeting of the hearing, and so that is when it occurs. So administration isn't selecting a chair. That is done through the members of the hearing. However, if the chair is available, then it would be natural for the chair to be the presiding officer because council has appointed the chair.
Right. What did you say that administration will direct? One of your statements said that administration will direct someone to do some part of that committee.
So with the role the administration plays is, as clerks of the Assessment Review Board, we assist in contacting members that are members of the Assessment Review Board to determine their availability to sit at hearings. There are multiple hearings that occur over the course of several weeks, starting end of July through to September. And so the clerk will contact members and give them dates of when hearings are occurring, and they will provide their availability back. And that's why it's very important to have multiple members on the board. 3 members sit at the hearing, depending on composite and local, of course. But typically there's 3 members. And so depending on their availability, then their schedules are set for those hearings. And so the clerk assists with that, being administration. So the clerk assists with that scheduling component, and that's their role.
Sorry, I got mixed up in some of that. That's perfect. The Assessment Review Board is not an easy board, so I agree. There has to be some stringent procedures in that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Hanson, for the detailed explanation. So just a quick overview then. Essentially, this is a change in language, not structure outside of the points you've just made.
No, yes, that's correct, through the chair. It is some editing, wording, updates to meet legislation and create clarity around the role of the Assessment Review Board.
Wonderful, thank you. And back to Councillor Bosch.
Thank you. Are you ready for business?
I am.
Thank you. I move that committee recommend council give 3 readings to Bylaw C-1461, being the Assessment Review Board Bylaw.
And that is in order. I'll call the question. And that carries 3-0. Outstanding items list, back to Chief McEachran.
Thank you, Chair Berg. So for the outstanding items list, our first item, the alternative committee schedule, is on track to still come forward in Q2, and Truth and Reconciliation was addressed today, so that one can be removed off the list.
And that's a significant one with a lot of hours and time and resources behind it. So nice to get that one behind us and move forward. Councillor O'Toole.
I'll look after the business at this time, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
I move that committee receive the April 11th, 2023 outstanding items list as amended for information.
That is in order. I'll call the question. Thank you. That passes 3-0. And with that, our committee business is done for today. Thank you.
Thank you.